Hello, today we're going to be making arrowheads using the tools that we made in the last episode of the series, which you can find over there. I love arrowheads, and wherever possible I always try and work from extant archaeology. The focus of this video is this arrowhead. It's a 12th or 13th century example of a Jessop's type MP3 from Coppergate in York. If that means nothing to you, don't worry, I have a monster of a video explaining arrowheads currently in the works. Let's get on to the forging. Firstly, choice of materials. For this project we'll be using a piece of 8mm square bar that's long enough to hold without tongs. I'm going to put down two chalk marks on the anvil. The first at 26mm, which is the length of the material we want to set down to make the socket. The second at 33mm, which is the length I want the finished socket to be. To perform the set down, we line up the steel with the 26mm chalk mark and turn it on its corner before striking down with the flat face of the hammer, half on, half off the anvil, straddling the edge. We take this set down to around half the thickness of the material. This process will increase its length slightly. It should be around 4mm short of the final 33mm. Then we can start spreading the socket. For this, we use the crosspeen of the hammer to push the material sideways with minimal increase in length. The straighter we can keep the end of the socket at this stage, the less work we have to do tidying it up later. Another important tip is that when we're spreading the socket, we want to focus on the sides and the far end. We're trying to leave some thickness where the blade joins the socket. This ensures a nice strong transition between the two. Watch my hammer motions carefully and you'll see me trying to avoid the transition to keep it thicker. With the socket spread, it's time to start rolling it up. Take the workpiece over to the cutting step of your anvil, or, if you don't have one, the step between the face and the horn. Using the peen of the hammer, we're going to gently tap the socket into the corner to start the curvature, moving it up and down as we go to curve evenly. Next, we're going to deal with the corners where the socket joins the head. It's important to address these carefully, or they can fold in unpredictable ways and give you a messy transition. By lowering the workpiece and aggressively tilting the hammer, we knock the corners in so that they're in line with the rest of the socket. Editing Ruby here. Yeah, I forgot to film the next bit, but continuing on the step of the anvil, bring the socket edges together. Ensure one goes under the other, something like this diagram here. If you push them together and they meet, they tend to bind and it can be a nightmare to untangle. Anyway, back to the film content. Then, to round off the socket, roll it in the step with little gentle taps. The next stage is easy to miss but very important. We're going to take it to the horn of the anvil and gently hammer down on the transition point. We want to be quite precise here about just hitting the transition point, so you can tilt your hammer and use the radius corner on it, or if you have one, you can use a little ball peen hammer. These gentle blows and repeated turning upsets the transition point, thickening it and strengthening it, and also it closes up the gap in the socket. This step introduced a dip where we've just been working, so we'll take it back to the face of the anvil, lowering the workpiece we strike with a tilted hammer to ensure that the socket is evenly tapered towards the neck of the arrowhead. To make the socket round and of the correct dimensions, we're going to use a mandrel, like the one we made in the last episode. Put the socket onto the mandrel and then strike from the other end to drive it on. This will round and increase the diameter of the socket. It can be useful to cut marks into the mandrel to indicate the diameters of common socket sizes if you're making lots of arrowheads. And with that, the socket's done. Now we're going to cut off 28mm for the head. I'm using a hot cut hardy because it's convenient, but you could use a hacksaw or an angle grinder or whatever you have. After the arrowhead is liberated from the bar, we're going to use the tongs that we made last time to hold the socket while we forge out the blade of the arrowhead. I know when this blade is finished it needs to be 40mm long, so we'll forge a square taper that is a little shy of that, around 37mm. Like for the first set down for the socket, we'll turn it on its corner and start flattening the blade down. We'll then use the crosspeen to draw out the sides to get the wide shoulders shown on the original. From here, we'll make fine adjustments to make it symmetrical, and use the flat side of the hammer to remove any crosspeen marks. At this point, the forging is complete. If you need to neaten up the end of the socket, you can do so with a grinder or a file, and then sharpen up the edges. This particular example will be used for living history displays only, so I'm not aiming for particularly sharp edges. Then, with a quick wire brush just to make it look neat and tidy, the arrowhead's finished. Why don't you give this a go at home and let me know how you get on in the comments. Massive thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. There's a bunch of reasons to join, including access to bonus content, the Discord server where you can hang out with me and a bunch of awesome peeps, and polls to decide what content you want me to make in the future. Come check it out.